Hi guys, this is Jonathan Rocker. I tried to do this on Sunday, but within a few minutes after starting, I started to feel a little funny. And there's no pause, so I ended up having to stop this and check my blood sugar. As it turned out, my blood sugar was really low. It was like 51 at the time I tested it. So then I went and had something sweet, checked it again about 10 minutes later, and it was 40 something. Anyway, as you can see, I'm still here, I'm okay, so whatever. So y'all have been reading my stuff for a while on online, and sometimes y'all like it, and that's good, you know. I really don't think there's anything all that special about it. I just write whatever's on my heart, and that's it. You know, if it's liked, it's liked. If it's not, it's not. Whatever. What I want to talk today, though, is something I've been chewing on for over 2 weeks now. So I'm going to call this Ambassadors of Truth. A reason for that is Yeshua is truth. He's light. And we are his disciples, his followers. And so he calls us to be bearers of truth and light. You know, we are the light of the world, you know, city on a hill, that sort of thing. And so it's very important for us to not just speak the truth, but live the truth. And I know that many people think that that's just Bible. And the Bible certainly is the gold standard for truth. Scripture's truth, plain straight up, that's the way it is. But if we are to live truth, to exemplify truth, then that's got to mean that there's more to it than just Bible. That means our whole life is truth. So, or at least it's supposed to be that way. So what we think should exemplify truth. The way we behave should exemplify truth. Whatever we say online, whatever we say behind closed doors, everything should exemplify truth. Now, that's in a perfect world. But we're not perfect. We're fallen. Get that. But still, the times when we make mistakes, when we stumble, we should admit such, repent, and go from there. So a couple of weeks I saw some things online, and it just really grates me because it goes against this very subject. You know, it really does, and it just, every time I see it, it's like nails on the chalkboard. It just drives me nuts. You know, how can people be like this? I don't get it. Well, sort of. See, I get that for most of us, we came into this through Christianity. You know, we walked down the aisle, we accepted Jesus into our lives, And we followed the way of church for all this time, and then now we've been shown the truth, that Torah is the truth, and it is. And then some people take it to the extreme. They go over so that now everything is pagan. This over here is pagan. That's pagan, that's pagan, everything's pagan. And it's not. It reminds me of when I was a teenager and learning about spiritual warfare. My mom told me a little thing and told me not to be like the two extremes. She said, on one hand, there are some Christians in regard to spiritual warfare where they stick their head in the sand and pretend like it's not even there. Okay. Stupid, but okay. Then there's the other group where they go running around all day saying, there's a demon, there's a demon, there's a demon. Now everywhere's a demon. Here, there, everywhere, there's a demon. That's not good either. And so what these people have done is they've done the same thing about paganism. This is pagan, that's pagan, everywhere's pagan. And that's not good. I understand that you feel that you were lied to, deceived, and that you don't want to be deceived anymore. I get that. But that doesn't mean we need to go to the other extreme and be like, everything's pagan. Take the name Yeshua, for example, which is a contraction of his full name, which is Yehoshua, or something like that. I don't always get it right. And but most of the time it's referred to as Yeshua. Y''SHUA. And then in Greek it was Jesus. Latin was still fairly close to that. Now the thing is that I started studying etymology before I became Torah observant. Etymology is the history of words, how the word today got to be what it is. You go chasing it back through history. To me, I find that tremendously fun and just really cool stuff. I enjoy it. I'll just sit there and ask, how did this word come to mean this? Like, for example, awful. You stop and think about that for a moment. See, the definition says awful is something that's really bad. But if you stop and think about it for a moment, full of awe. That should be something good. But the definition is completely backwards of that. I don't get it. So chasing that through etymology explains how it came about. The same thing was true with Yeshua and how it progressed through history. See, the thing is that the letter J didn't come around until 1600, give or take. And before that, in the Anglo-Saxons, they used to use a DG to make that J sound. Okay. But if you go back a little bit further, and then in Germanic, they use the J as a Y sound. Even today, in Germany, they still use that. Ja. J-A, if I remember right. I used to live in Germany for 14 months. It was an exciting time. That was when Chernobyl went up like a Christmas tree. And that's when there were a lot of car bombings on base and stuff like that. So it was a very exciting time. Excuse me. So the Germans will say ja as a way of saying yes. So for them it has a ya sound. In Spanish it has a H sound. You know, Jorge, that sort of thing. It's in English where it takes on the J sound, which again in Anglo-Saxon was initially a DG sound. And you can still see some of that in modern English. We still use DG, like judge. J-U-D-G-E. See, we still got it there. So it went from Yeshua to Jesus. In Greek and Latin, very, very similar to each other in sound. And then in Germanic, it's still Jesus. And then it went over to France, which is where it first got the J sound. Alright, that's the first time it became Jesus. Alright, so that's the etymology of it. Just because it sounds like something doesn't necessarily mean that it's pagan. However, what the enemy likes to do is he likes to copy something and pervert it, corrupt it into something else. And that is extremely common. You know, Hasatan figures if he can't create, then he wants to pervert. He wants to try and destroy. So these people have gone and said that this is pagan, when if they understood the etymology of it, how it moved through history and how the language changed, that's how it came about. Now, yes, in Hebrew it's still Yeshua, and yes, we should strive for a better transliteration. However, just because it's Jesus doesn't necessarily make it pagan. Now, where it gets to be pagan is when we start associating things with Jesus that aren't true, like Christmas, Easter, Sunday worship, things like that he put away the law. Okay, now that would be pagan. So if you're going to say Jesus did these things, then yes, that would be pagan. The name itself, not necessarily. However, due to the issue at hand where the mass of churchianity, the churchians, like to say that Jesus did away with the law and was born on Christmas and was killed on Good Friday and rose on Easter, which is only 36 hours, not 3 days. Then yes, for that I would have to say that yes, that part is pagan. So for simplicity, I tend to go with Hebrew because it doesn't have that issue. It remains more pure because when you think of that, you think of what's in the Bible. It's Hebrew, it lines up with Bible. Okay, So, but I've even seen these people. This is really what got me going the other day is when these people said that Yahweh was pagan. I just about went through the roof on that one. I was just absolutely beside myself. I couldn't believe it. How can you do that? It just boggles my mind. Because at that point, you're not just profaning his name. You're also blaspheming. To profane his name means to bring it low, to make it common, to misuse. And it's not just in speech. It can also be how you live your life. Blasphemy, though. Blasphemy is, well, in Hebrew it'd be like Lashon Hara. It'd be to say something evil about it. So to say that Yahweh is pagan and that it's this pagan god or goddess, as the case may be, I don't remember. After all, it was 2 weeks ago. That just, like I said, I just about went through the roof on that. Just wow. So this is why we need to be so careful as to the claims that we make. We can't just go and say whatever. We're going to be held accountable for what we say. It matters. It means something. And while I get the intent that you want to preserve the integrity of the name, you can't just go around saying stuff. I get that the W didn't come about until such time, which I think was 700-800 AD off the top of my head. The V didn't come about and, okay, I know a lot of the Jewish people tend to go with Yehovah, like Nehemiah Gordon goes with Yehovah. So I'm cool with that. I'm also cool with Yahweh. Typically, that's how I think about it, is Yahweh, and I'll tend to write it YHWH. But to me, I equate it as tomato. Which one's right? Well, they're both right. Either and either. Which one's right? Well, they're both right. It depends on where you are, some people, they say it's this. Okay, fine. It doesn't mean we need to fight over it. You know, a big surprise to me was aluminum. Here in America, we call it aluminum. Heck, we even spell it that way. Over in England, though, it's aluminium. That's right, and they spell it that way. You know, for them, if you say jelly, that's what we think of as Jello. You know, when they say jam, it's what we would call jelly. You know, so that's why having something defined matters so much. And we have to be so incredibly careful, and we don't want to profane or blaspheme His holy name, His set-apart name. It's too precious. You know, so people unfortunately are going to run away and going to go do silly things like that, and we can't stop them. However, we can learn from them. Just because they go and they say that Yahweh is pagan and that it's this God's. Look, like I said, Hasatan likes to copy and corrupt. This is why I enjoy ancient Hebrew and Edenics. You know, tracing the language all the way back to the Garden of Eden, you know, before the Tower of Babel, and all the way back to Adam and Eve. Of course, that's really, really, really hard to do. About the furthest I can get would be Egyptology and can't think of it right now. It'd be easier for me to show you online, which I can't use this particular application to do that. So I'm still experimenting with webcams and the applications and how to be able to do this and record my desktop and all that, so bear with me. Alright, so but Hasatan likes to use things against us. He knows how we think and the way we are. After all, he has been observing us since the beginning of time. So he knows exactly how we work, how our particular minds work. Like for me, it's not a good idea to come at me straight on, because I'm going to knock you down. However, the best way to get at me would be to get me curious, distract me, get me interested in something over here, and have me chase it for a while. See, he knows that that's the best way to get at me. You know, that's just the way it is. He knows. Excuse me. Sorry guys, when my blood sugar is really high, I get really thirsty. And just before I started doing this, my blood sugar was almost 400. So yes, I took some stuff to bring it down. Took my insulin. So, but this is why we have to stay grounded and rooted in the Word. You know, and we have to be ever so vigilant that we don't go this way or that way. We got to stay right on track. That's why it's the straight and narrow. We have to stay on track, because it's so easy to go into Gnosticism. You know, Gnosticism was the pursuit of knowledge. And it was quite common in the first century, where they would get all puffed up with all this knowledge. And it's really easy for us to learn all this stuff, the idioms and the grammar and the pronunciation, the transliteration and translation and all this stuff, how it all fits together. And yes, it is really cool. It's really, really exciting. It's certainly opening things up to me. From what I see, a lot of you are also really excited, and it's opening up a lot of stuff for y'all, and that's really, really cool. But we don't want to get caught up in Gnosticism, where it's knowledge, and we don't want to go down that path, which is how things like Yahweh is pagan. Well, that's Gnosticism. You've just, like I said, not only profaned the name, but you've also blasphemed it. No, don't. Okay? To acknowledge that there is a goddess out there with something similar, fine. That's fine. There's a difference between sounding the alarm and making someone aware to something that may be similar, as opposed to saying this is the same. So anytime you want to say that this is the same as his name, I have an issue with that. I take a big offense to that. So the other thing is that it seems, and I did some research on this, and so it's not entirely new. It started in the late 80s, early 90s, something like that, but this flat earth stuff. Okay, now look, in the 90s I went to ITT Tech, got my degree in electronics and computer engineering. So science is a hobby of mine. I enjoy it for the most part. I'll contemplate things like quantum physics and particle physics and theoretical physics. To me, that's fun. It's like a mental jigsaw puzzle. And for me, it's just a whole lot of fun. So, I've worked with satellite communications. I've worked with waves, where there's propagating waves and standing waves. Like those who work on acoustics, you're setting up the speakers, and you're with your board, and you're making sure everything's a certain way and that you get the best possible sound and all that. Okay, so similar thing happens with satellite technology. They have something called a standing wave. It's when you have the waves and they'll come together to actually amplify. It'll actually go up. Which in acoustics, that's where you hear the feedback. That great big awful noise. And it's because the two waves come together and they amplify. Alright? Now, if you get it so that the waves come together, they can cancel each other out, that can be good too. It depends on your purpose, your application for it. Do you want to amplify the wave, or do you want to cancel it out, or do you want to keep it the same? You know? And so I've actually worked with that, calculating the waves and knowing where they are, what position they are, the peak and the trough and all that stuff. I've actually worked with all that. I've worked with lasers and fiber optics and all that stuff. It's a lot of fun. A little bit of math to it, but it's a lot of fun. And so I understand how TVs and satellites, cable and all that, how that actually works. You know, I can actually look at a bit of cable and tell you if you have a standing wave within that bit of cable or not, because it will wear down that cable. You know, that black or white shielding around the cable that they have. A standing wave will actually get hot and it'll wear that cable out. You know, you can take a small fluorescent tube, a light tube, run it around your microwave, and if the tube lights up, then you've got a leak. Of course, if you've got that much of a leak, then you'll feel it. You will literally feel it. It'll get warm. But anyway, so we do have satellites out there that communicate all this to you. And I can remember back in 84, 85, when we had just come back to the States from being over in Europe, England and Germany specifically. And we picked up our phone to call some of our friends over in Europe. And I noticed that there was a 3-second delay. Now, the reason for that delay was because it takes 3 seconds to go from here up through the stratosphere, hit the satellite, and to come back down. And it takes 3 seconds for all that to transpire. Now they have it built in so that there's buffers in it so that we don't have that happen, or so that it's not noticeable anymore. That's what they've done, is they put buffers in it so that it's not noticeable. They're always trying to improve technology, but you can't go faster than the speed of light. So it's, no matter how it sounds, it's still going to take the same amount of time. So like I said, they buffered it so that it doesn't sound that way. So, but there are satellites, I think there's something like 200 satellites in orbit. And the fact that you have your television displaying all the channels that it does, that's proof of it right there. And I know that some of y'all will point out, well, look at these pictures from space and there's no satellites. Yeah, these satellites, they're orbiting the Earth every, I think they said every 90 minutes, I think. I'd have to double check. So, you know, they're going around really fast. So, just because that picture doesn't show it right then doesn't mean, you know. And usually what the photographer, you gotta understand, the photographer, they're looking for a nice, clean, pristine shot of the Earth. They don't want it obstructed by satellites. It looks a mess. Before I got into college, I took like 3 years of photography in high school. I was okay at it. I thought about becoming a professional photographer, but I didn't think I was good enough at it. So I get to develop the film and print my own pictures and all that good stuff. I even printed out most of the pictures for the yearbook, and they would come in, give me a stack of negatives like this, and tell me that they need it done. How soon? In an hour. And I just look at it and go, what am I? Fast 1 hour photo? For those of you that were around back then, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, yeah, I was pretty good at it, so I know a lot of the tricks in photography. I know the sort of lens it takes to have a fisheye. It's a certain type of lens called a fisheye lens. It's a 28 millimeter fisheye lens. And it gives a certain look to it, to the picture, and it's extremely obvious when a picture is taken with a fisheye lens. It's very obvious. I could take a picture with a fisheye lens of this room, and it would look like a bubble. A fisheye lens does that. It's very obvious, as opposed to a regular lens. A 50 millimeter lens won't do that. And you've already heard me say a couple of times how that I've traveled a bit. I was in England and Germany. Later on, after I went to ITT Tech, a friend of mine, my former girlfriend, her family decided to take me and them on a vacation where I got to go to Turkey, and I got to see Ephesus and Laodicea and that sort of stuff. It was really cool. So I've been up traveling around. I've been to Hawaii, and one of my favorite things to do is I like to sit in a window seat, and I like to look out. I like to watch as we're taking off and as we're landing. I like to see how that the people get smaller, and then the cars will get smaller, then the buildings, and before long, instead of looking like little ants, they just kind of blend in, except for maybe the really big buildings. You can still sort of see the really tall buildings, sort of, but it all kind of blends in after a little bit. When you're traveling at around 35,000 feet, at about 500 miles an hour, yeah. And so I'd like to look out the window there over the horizon, and yeah, I see the curve. It's not the windows, they're just regular windows. I've always been intrigued with this stuff. I can remember in 5th grade, I was intrigued by light, still am. I used to look through the prism, and I wanted to understand light. And I also read a story on storm chasers, and I thought that would be really cool. And then one day in Texas, this is before we went to England, so one day in Texas, the sirens go off, and my mom's calling me to come inside, and I can see the funnel cloud off in the distance, and I'm asking my mom if I can stand outside and just watch it. She tells me no, and to get my rear inside. So I did. Leave it to kids to be innocent and not understand. I just think it's cool. But anyway, having traveled so much, I have seen a lot of stuff and experienced a lot of stuff. I've seen the curve, and I understand the mathematics and some of the physics behind it and all that. And while all this may or may not be interesting depending on the type of person you are, I find it interesting. At the same time, to talk about flat Earth is insulting. It's not even common sense. It goes against common sense would be a better way of saying it, because common sense proves out that the Earth is round. And I know that some of you try and argue and say that the circle of the Earth means a flat disk. Look, one thing I know about people, and it's been going on for years, okay? Lawyers, theologians, whatever. They like to argue, and they like to take things and twist it to whatever they want. So for those that are looking at the circle of the Earth and you're taking it as disk, fine. But you weren't back in Isaiah's time. So since you weren't back in his time and you weren't talking with him, you don't know for sure. There's every indication that it may have included round, like a sphere, flat disk, maybe one application, but we weren't there. We weren't with Isaiah. So to assert such is stupid. Alright, it's just flat out stupid. Alright, especially when science has proven over and over and over, Earth is round. Earth is round. Now, I'm not going to go on about this. I'm not going to get into an argument. If you want to post that on my wall, I will take it off. So don't even bother with it. I will take it off. If you persist, well then I'll take other steps. But the reason I'm talking about all this is because the way we live and what we say matters. Because when we portray ourselves as believers in Yeshua, followers of Torah, followers of truth, we're supposed to be the light and salt of the earth. We're supposed to be leading others. Okay? So when we say something like the earth is flat, everybody else laughs and knows how stupid that sounds. So you immediately lose all credibility and you destroy for those of us that are trying to be a good example. And that's why I find it so irritating and reprehensible to me. You know, if you want to go and ruin your own name, fine, have at that. You know, but when it comes to Yahweh and His name, and Yeshua His Son, and you want to bring that low, I take issue with that. I take a huge issue with that. So when you talk about anything where it hurts credibility, that's offensive. And it is important. You know, but again, all this stems from way back at the beginning where I was talking about that it comes from we believed in Jesus Christ as our Savior, and then later on we find that it goes against the Torah. You know, we'd been taught all our lives that the Torah's done away with, that it was nailed to the cross and all that stuff, and that was totally wrong. It was totally and completely wrong. And yes, I share with you in that frustration. You know, I wrote a note about it on Facebook called The Torah and the Christian, where I expressed my frustration about that, how that I grown up in this. I was literally raised in the church, you know. Every time we moved, we changed denomination. One place it'd be Baptist, another place it was Assembly of God, and we bounced back and forth. You know, I went to Royal Rangers, which is like the Assembly of God version of Boy Scouts. You know, and I won contest for memory verse, you know, and all that stuff. It was fun. It was cool, you know. But I won the contest in that stuff, and then to find out later that they were twisting the verses to what they want. Yes, it's upsetting. I get it. I understand, and I share that frustration with you. That doesn't mean we need to go around and treat everything as pagan. We don't need to do that. You know, science is not a bad thing. In fact, Yahweh gave us science as a way to explore and discover another aspect of who He is. It's another aspect of who He is. So why shun it? Why run from it? We should be embracing it. Yahweh left us with math and science as tools to discover that aspect of Him. He created the whole universe, and He did so with math and science. So science is not a bad thing, so don't shun it. Anyway, I've never ever done anything this long before, so if you've made it this far, thank you. Until I figure out how to do where I can record me and record the desktop and get better at this video stuff, how to splice video together and all that, just bear with me as I just do talks like this. since it's sitting on my lap and all this, it's kind of awkward to use the Bible for right now. I do hope to incorporate that later on. I would really like to show you the Bible and all the stuff that I've learned from it. That's why I show it on my wall like I did the other day, where I showed the Hebrew word for forever, to make a point about how that Yahweh's commands are forever. The Torah is forever. And that doesn't mean that it was nailed to the cross and done away with. No, it's forever. So, I hope that this has benefited you in some way. Until next time, Shalom.